And a very happy Tuesday to you at 12:07 in the West. It's the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Texas.
John, full-time podcaster and part-time governor Gavin Newsom has a brand new venture. Gavin's got a Substack.
There's so much mis and disinformation out there. There's so much noise. I don't need to tell you that. So the question is, how do we break through all of that noise and engage in real conversations? And that's why I'm launching on Substack. I hope you'll follow me so we can continue to engage in a two-way conversation at this critical moment in our history.
Wait a minute. Explain this to me, because there's so many of these websites I get them confused. Substack is kind of like a pay-per-view for podcasts or newspaper columns, correct?
Usually, yes. Some people use it for recipe blogs. Some people, like our friend Daniel Gus, do it as a newsletter, and people can subscribe, and they can even pay to see different posts, and you can do different audio things. I don't know what's the difference between Gavin doing this and Gavin doing his podcast, unless iHeart soured on that deal.
This is kind of like the political version of OnlyFans.
I think that's next.
It might be. 2 podcasts and now a Substack?
At what point does he start, doing his day job?
Never. I don't even think that's on the list. Have you ever seen a guy so disinterested in their day job ever? And let's not forget, when he was lieutenant governor, he did the same thing. He went over to Al Gore's television network, the Current Network, and he did a weekend television show over there. For someone that has no interest in elected office, can't he allow someone to do that job who cares?
That'd be nice. Gavin Newsom has posted his inaugural blog on his Substack, gavinnewsom.substack.com. And it's way too long for me to want to even care to read it. It's a TLDR. Too long, didn't read.
Who is going to pay money to read that guy's writings? I don't even think his voters would pay to read what he has to say about politics. He's literally everywhere all the time. What's the old saying? Why buy the cow if you get the milk for free? I'll tell you, that's not surprising. What was surprising involving California governors earlier today was how magnificent Arnold Schwarzenegger was on The View today. Did you see that?
Arnold Schwarzenegger had a very different take than was expected by the ladies of The View on the subject of immigration.
But the key thing also is at the same time that we got to do things legal. That is the important thing, So you got to do things legal. And those people that are doing illegal things in America and that are foreigners, they are not smart. Because when you come to America, you're a guest. And you have to behave like a guest. Like when I go to someone's house and I'm a guest, then I will do everything I can to keep things clean and to make my bed and to do everything that is the right thing to do, rather than committing a crime or being abusive or something like that. So that doesn't really work in this country. So I think...
Notice how many times they're trying to stop him from talking and he just blows right past them because he's Arnold and he don't care?
Well, it's radio, so you can't see the visual. But the real angry one, well, I guess that's not really descriptive, is it?
Yeah, I have no idea which one you're talking about.
Sonny Hostin was grabbing him by the arm as he kept going, as if to say, shut up. And he just blew right through the stop sign and kept going. It was great.
Rather than committing a crime or being abusive or something like that. So that doesn't really work in this country. So I think the important thing is when you become an immigrant, to think about, okay, I go to America because I want to use America for the great opportunities that America has in education, in jobs, creating a family, all of those kind of things. Then you have to think about, okay, if I get all of those things from America, then I have to give something back. You have a responsibility as an immigrant to give back to America and to pay back to America and to go and do something for your community for no money whatsoever. Give something back to after-school programs, Special Olympics, or whatever it is. Make this country a better place.
That was the longest I think those hens have ever gone without clucking. And I think Whoopi laid an egg. He was so great when he first ran in the recall election as a candidate. And even when he first took office, he reminded me a little bit of Trump. And then after he lost those ballot initiatives, the guy just went south, and he's been pretty consistently south for a long time. And then every once in a while, you see a little glimmer of what he used to be. And boy, when Arnold Schwarzenegger is good, there's really no one better. And he was great on The View today, especially when you contrast him with the warden up in Sacramento, who is failing about as badly as you can fail as governor of California. And fresh off of the anti-Kings rally, I don't know if you saw this one, Randy, but Gavin Newsom, who claims to be a big champion of democracy, is now back at it trying to ban gasoline-powered cars. So, go ahead.
Well, Gavin Newsom, even though the federal government took away his waiver that says that California cannot have stricter standards than the federal government for something like banning gas-powered cars, Gavin signs an executive order saying, I'm going to do it anyway.
So there was never a vote in the California legislature on this. It was him and an executive order that then was nullified by the Congress of the United States on a vote by duly elected members of Congress. And by the way, it was a bipartisan vote. There were Democrats who voted with the Republicans, some of them from Michigan, where they produce all the cars, and I forget who the others were. But Democrats supported this initiative. Some did. Not all, but some. And it got sent back to Gavin. You can't do this. The Congress has weighed in, and you lost. So what does he do? He comes up with another executive order. Right after he spent the entire weekend calling Donald Trump a king. Just think about this for a second. He doesn't want to go through the legislature. He doesn't want to obey the rules that the legislature passes. He doesn't want to follow the process. He doesn't want to have to acknowledge the separation of powers and federal supremacy and a federalist system. He doesn't care about any of that. King Gavin wants to sit on his throne and issue edicts for all the peasants to follow. That's his idea of running a government. And I guess if all you have to do is issue decrees and you don't have to work with the legislature or anything like that, then you have time for 45 podcasts and a Substack. You got a lot of time to kill because you don't have to do all the normal things that a governor has to do. And this isn't the first time this jackass has done this. Go back to COVID. California had an emergency in place for a very long period of time. I think we were the longest in the nation, were we not?
Oh, we were the longest by far. We kept the schools closed for the longest. Gavin Newsom in December of 2020 decided to ban outdoor dining. Remember, at one point there was a curfew in place for the entire state. And of course, no one will ever forget when Gavin Newsom banned going to the beach.
Yeah.
But basically, none of those things were voted on by the legislature. Because the emergency was declared, Gavin essentially had the power of a monarch. And he used that power all the time, where we had to follow the rules and he didn't. He'd shut down the restaurants and then go to the French Laundry with all his friends and not wear a mask. That's what a monarch does. Monarchs can get away with that because the people don't have a say. There is no legislature in a monarchy. No elected representatives have a say. That's the way Gavin Newsom likes it. But then to turn around and say you're some kind of champion of democracy and you're attacking a monarch is beyond my ability to comprehend. This is like the preacher who gets caught in the car with the prostitute, where your private demons become your public crusades. That's Gavin. He protests too much. And he protests too much for a reason, because that's what he wants to be. He doesn't want to be president of the United States. He wants to be king. That's what he lusts for. And he's jealous that Trump has the power of the presidency, but Newsom doesn't want the power of the presidency. He wants the power of the throne. And here's what I don't understand. It's obvious to just about anyone who's paying attention that that's the game that this guy is playing. And all those Democrats in the state legislature who've just let him stomp all over them, I don't know what they think they get out of that. First of all, you get treated like trash, and no one likes to be treated like trash, especially politicians with egos the size of North Dakota. But that's how he treats them. I bet you he doesn't even know their names. And it's not one of these Joe Biden situations where he did but forgot it. He never even learned it in the first place. But beyond just being treated personally very poorly, what do they think they're going to do career-wise? If you're irrelevant and everyone knows you're irrelevant, how do you think you're going to move up the ladder when you get termed out of office? You see all of these people. Tony Atkins was the president pro tem of the Senate, and she's running to be governor. And guess what? No one knows who the hell she is. You see Tony Atkins, her name, on a piece of paper, on a ballot, and you start scratching your head. I don't think I'm familiar with him. Who is this Tony guy? Nobody knows who she is. Nobody. Because she was the president pro tem of the Senate when Gavin had absolute power. You don't know who she is because she wasn't relevant. Same thing with the Speaker of the Assembly. Back when Willie Brown was Speaker, everyone knew who Willie Brown was. Everyone knew who Willie Brown was. You couldn't go anywhere if you're Willie Brown without being recognized because the guy had a lot of power. He didn't let anyone stomp all over him. He'd never do that. But Anthony Rendon, not the broken down third baseman for the Angels, but the other one, the Speaker of the Assembly, he's now running for treasurer or something? Do you think anyone knows who he is? He shares his name with a famous person or a formerly famous person, so maybe he'll get some juice out of that. But no one remembers anything that he did when he was Speaker, and he was Speaker for a long time because he didn't have any power. Gavin had all the power. And now he's got a Substack to go along with the 2 podcasts and his frequent TV appearances. You notice he doesn't do much news in California in terms of local news. It's always on the cable channels because that's what he cares about. A few days ago, I went on when Gavin was saying that nothing was happening in downtown LA and everything was fine and the LAPD had everything under control. And I said that the man is a sociopath. I want to make sure I clarify that right now. Sometimes in broadcasting, we do things that could be thrown into the hyperbole category, where you say a guy is 900 years old because he's old. He's not really 900 years old. Maybe he's 75, maybe he's 85, whatever. He's not 900. The hyperbole is the exaggeration. And sometimes we do that with insults or with descriptive adjectives that we throw onto people. I want to be very clear. When I said that Gavin Newsom was a sociopath, that wasn't hyperbole. I really do believe this guy could beat a lie detector. I think he is that cold-blooded. There is ice water in those veins. I don't even know if the guy has a pulse. But I can tell you this. He has a lust for power. He is willing to do anything or say anything to accumulate more power. He doesn't believe in anything. This is why when people say, oh, he's a lefty, he's a liberal, he's a this, he's a that, I don't think he has any personal politics. I really don't. I think the only thing that he really truly does believe in is that he should be the one in charge. That's what he believes in to his core. Outside of that, he's very malleable. When he ran for office, local office in San Francisco, he ran as the conservative candidate. He ran as the business-friendly candidate, as the guy who was going to do something about homelessness, as the guy who was going to make sure the budget was balanced, all of those things. And he wrote a book Citizen Government, I think it was called, that was pretty conservative, actually. I think Mark Levin did a review of the book for him and praised it.
Citizenville.
There you go. And Mark Levin, you can check that out. I think Mark Levin gave him a glowing review because it was basically a conservative take on local government. And then he runs for governor, and the teachers union is up for grabs, the endorsement. He's running against Antonio and a bunch of other nobodies. And he realizes that he needs their support and their money, and Antonio had the charter school people behind him, so he gets in bed with the California Federation of Teachers, and he becomes the left-wing candidate in that race. Not because he believed in any of it. That was the lane that was open. So he became the lefty. And then when the recall looked like it was gaining steam, that's when he became the hard partisan, because that's what helped him beat the recall. After the Democrats lost the election, he started having Charlie Kirk on the podcast and Michael Savage, and he wanted to become a conservative again. Now he's fighting with Trump, and he's the partisan warrior. I'm curious to get your take on this at 800-222-5222, 1-800-222-5222. Serious question. Do you think Gavin Newsom is a sociopath? I do. What say you at 800-222-5222? It's the John Phillips Show. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Nicholas writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. You guys were talking about Vegas yesterday. Well, as a betting man, I would definitely take the over on whether or not Newsom murders a couple of hookers every year. Allegedly.
All right. I think Gavin's a sociopath. What say you at 800-222-5222? Let's begin with Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hi, John.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm going to try to be very mindful with my answer. So I did a little research, and so according to a couple of websites, let me start with the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm not going to read paragraphs. I'm just going to read phrases. Forming genuine emotional contacts, having trouble forming genuine emotional contacts, and having persistent trouble with the law. Okay? Disregard for rules and the rights of others. So that's from the Cleveland Clinic. The Cleveland Clinic is also one of these medical organizations who tends to be pretty lefty. So they also say sociopath is an outdated and harmful term, once described for someone who's been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. So that's the Cleveland Clinic. WebMD says, come on, get it up here. Okay. You might not.
Don't worry, we got 3 hours.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. You might not feel remorse for bad things you do and might often take advantage of others for your own personal gain. Gee, let's see. Let me be mindful here. Yeah, that sounds like our governor. So anyway, I think it's absolutely definition of Governor Newsom.
All right. Well, thank you for the call. And he
absolutely.
He checked all the boxes.
We always appreciate that.
All right. Let's go to William in San Jose. William, hello.
Nope.
Okay. Let's go to John in Hayward.
Hey, guys. Thanks much for taking my call. Gavin Mussolini is definitely a sociopath. I've never seen a bigger scumbag in my life. Climbing on Getty's private 737 and all the many other things that guy does in private that nobody else knows about except us private corporate pilots. So, yeah, he's an ass.
Oh, wait. Have you had him on one of your planes?
I have not personally had him on one of my planes, but I know people who have, and I've seen him climbing on Getty's 737 in Oakland. So, yeah. He'll do whatever he has to do to get the money and the power.
How is he personally to the flight attendants and the pilots? Did they say if he was nasty to them?
I don't think it's so much nasty to him, but it's what they want them to do after the flights and what these people do during the flights, that is interesting. So
I'm trying to
never
read between
experienced
those
it
lines.
personally. Well, they're getting between the lines.
Oh.
Well, they called the friendly skies for a reason, Randy.
Allegedly.
You don't get that on Spirit.
You got to fly private for that kind of service.
Well, you can on Spirit. There's just an upcharge. Let's go to John and Hayward. Oh, wait, that was John and Hayward.
That was John.
He's got me so flustered reading the same name twice. Let's go to Laura in Nevada. Laura, hello.
Hi, it's Laura in Novato, south
Novato,
of San
okay.
Francisco. Novato.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say you hit it on the head. Spot on. You couldn't have explained it better. That's exactly who he is. It's always been. And isn't he Pelosi's nephew or something? I mean, the apple doesn't fall far in the family. So it's all self-explanatory. Everybody knows it except for most people in this state, unfortunately.
Here's another one that I forgot about until I just saw an email here from John, who said, don't forget that he slept with his campaign manager's wife, and the campaign manager was his best friend. So the sin there isn't even necessarily the sin of cheating. It's the sin of betrayal to your best friend that you would sleep with his wife, of all people.
100%. It's all about him.
All right.
Any way, shape, or form.
Thank you for the call. Let's go to Paul in Montecito. Paul, hello.
Hello. Yes, that's what I was going to address. Is for some reason the news media looks a certain way, and that's at this point that's all water under the bridge, right? But initially, when I read that Mr. Newsom slept with his best friend's wife while they were married and while he was his campaign manager and while he was his best friend, I was raised to, as silly as this sounds, obey the laws, tell the truth, and work hard. And when I read that, he would never have credibility in my value system analysis, because if you betray yourself, which is also betraying your best friend, the woman went on the news and said it was consensual. Well, to me, it's irrelevant. The way I look at it, how could you possibly live with yourself if you had any self-examination values whatsoever? I mean, you know that there's certain maneuvers you can make in life. You're jumping into the fire, right? And so at this point, I'm at a loss to understand why people don't report things that are actually reality. You could switch over to Kamala Harris being Willie Brown's girlfriend and getting 2 jobs and not showing up. The list goes on and on. But when it comes to the state of California, Mr. Newsom's decisions impact each and every one of us every day. And I think that betrayal of his best friend's relationship, that's the foundational element from which my scope judges him.
Well, it's also completely within his character to do what he did. And it's not even, as I mentioned before, so much of the cheating that's the problem here. It's that this guy is your best friend. He's your campaign manager. He's killing himself for you to get elected, and you reward him by sleeping with his wife.
Yeah, and even the campaign manager, best friend, I believe his name was Alex, he didn't go on the news and say derogatory comments about him. That's what kind of a person he was, and I can't even imagine being in his shoes in the first place. But to have that happen when you're batting 10,000% for another human being, that is your best friend. I couldn't even deal with that. That would affect the rest of my life.
I was talking to people in Sacramento after the French Laundry happened, and it was his best friend, his current best friend or then best friend, who was someone who was an employee of his, who then became the lobbyist for PG&E, and he was the guy that was having the birthday party at the French Laundry. And Newsom went to the party when the restaurants in other parts of California were closed due to COVID from one of his edicts. And after he got caught, it became a rallying cry during the recall election, and it became very embarrassing for him. And what I was told was that he blamed the best friend. That when Newsom privately retells the story, he's the victim in the story, and the villain was his friend who had the birthday party. And that guy, who was Gavin Newsom's best friend and the hot lobbyist in Sacramento, the one that everyone wanted to hire because he could always get Gavin on the phone, Gavin hurt his business and punished him after the French Laundry because he blamed him for all of the negative attention.
Right. And, when you've been around enough people, you do understand. You don't agree with it. But as an example, when you look at the senator, what was his name, Padilla, that approached the Homeland person, I spent 10 years in law enforcement, and trust me, if a male approached Gavin Newsom's personal bodyguard in that manner, he would be taken to the ground or possibly even shot. You don't exhibit aggressive behavior, especially in front of elected officials. But the way that the narrative is twisted all the time, I think President Bush, the son, knew this. He knew this very, very in depth. When you tell a story long enough and repeat it often enough, people begin to believe it. And that's what I see as a tragedy, because, you can go to the protest or whatever you want to call the gathering of all these people, and you can put your camera on the people that are peaceful, or you can put your camera on the people that are violent. And there were even people in Los Angeles who've seen 20, 30 years of gatherings who said this last one was like something they've never seen. And the people that had to stand guard in front of their own businesses, I remember reading about an Asian woman that stood guard in front of her business, and then she went inside to go to sleep, and I think they shattered her window, graffiti everywhere, and end all be all, when you come against law enforcement, you're coming against the people that are paid to attempt to take care of us. And the way that I look at it now, what's most sad for me is we have people in our country that are against us. That's not even talking about the illegal aliens and politicians that are self-serving. We have people in our own country that are against law and order. Why do you think crowds go to businesses in Los Angeles and break into AutoZone and tear apart the place? Because they know the reality of getting caught is statistically very small. And then on top of that, the element of actual punitive action is negligible. There was a guy a few years ago in Home Depot, he was 80-something, doing his job, and somebody went to go steal, and he's from the old school, so he tried to intervene. He was pushed to the ground. His head was hit. He died, I think, 2 days later. So when you and your wife go to the grocery store and there's homeless people that have knives, if they stab you, it's just a small news story. What they're going to actually do to that person, what can you do to a homeless person? Stop and think about it. And this is impacting each and every one of us. And the way that I look at it,
it's one of these things where you have everything to lose and they have nothing to lose. So the risk level is different depending on the individual that you're talking about. And when you have a ton of people in your population who have nothing to lose, and the likelihood of them being punished for breaking the law is slim to none, you end up with dangerous situations happening all over the place. And that's what we live with here in California, and we shouldn't. Thank you for the call, sir. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number. Do you think Gavin Newsom's a sociopath? I do. What say you? Your call's coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. But right now it's time to go back to the phones. Let's begin with Susan in San Francisco. Susan, hello.
Randy and yourself. I wanted to share another factual story. Unfortunately, Alex's wife was not the first one that boy Gavin pulled that with. At one time, he shared a house in Cow Hollow with a very best friend, long time. And also in the house lived that best friend's new fiance. And one day when that best friend came home from work, she proceeded to inform him. She had a roller bag packed, and she informed him that Gavin had hit on her in a very heavy way, and he wasn't such a good friend after all. She was going to go stay with family for 3 days, and he needed to decide whether it was Gavin or her. And she said, I understand you have investments with him. I'm not asking you to give that up, but I am telling you, since we are all in the same social circle, that if you choose to go with me, that never again will Gavin be allowed in the same room with me. Within 24 hours, the best friend contacted her. The decision was to stay with her, which he did. And it's known within the inner circle that from that day forward, when they were at social gatherings, being in the same social circle, at no time was that woman ever allow herself in the same room with him, and he also knew the rule.
Oh, I believe that entirely. And again,
Oh,
like the other story, it's entirely within the character of the man we all know.
absolutely, positively. It's all about his looks. And it's fairly known within the city, whether you're in the upper echelon of city government or in the troops, that wherever he's at in a meeting or whatever, if you do not compliment him on his looks, what he's wearing or whatever, he ignores you. He won't acknowledge you. He won't speak to you. This guy has always been an empty suit.
I agree. Thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Monica in San Jose. Monica, hello.
Hey, first of all, I love your show, so thanks for being on at this hour.
Thank you.
I not only think he's a sociopath, he is a clinical narcissist. The other thing I want to bring up is I have an autoimmune disease, and in every other state you can get injectable vitamin D. An injectable, I think it's an enzyme. It's called a glutathione. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but he has made those two illegal in California.
So what do you do to get it?
In every state, we can't. In California, it's illegal. Doctors can't get it, and they are injections that doctors provide, but you can't get it. Maybe because it's tied to pharmaceuticals. I don't know, but you can no longer get it in California. Every other state you can, but you can't get it here.
It's so weird. When I was renovating my house, I wanted to put a pot filler for my coffee station and install it into the wall. And those are illegal in California. I had to have it shipped to Texas and then brought by airplane to California, because if you tried to buy a pot filler online, they wouldn't sell it to you and deliver it in California.
And I saw, I don't know if it was a podcast or what have you, but she also has an autoimmune disease, and she was crying online saying, I have to move to another state. You know, they're not toxic. They're just giving you a higher dose of what's already available in some of our fruits and vegetables. It's absolutely insane. He is the devil incarnate. God
All right. Thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Randy, I bet you didn't know that coffee drinkers are responsible for the drought.
It's the first time I've heard of it.
All right, we've got 2 more hours coming up on the John Phillips Show. The Fix California hour is next. Don't you go anywhere.